Okay, in today's episode, we're going to cover 10 must haves in a farmland lease. And you might be saying to yourself, Rick, why are you covering a lease when all you do is help people buy and sell? Primarily because people, honest to God, wind up with more dirt than they need the majority of the time. They'll buy 5 acres, they're only going to use two or three, sometimes only one or two. They buy 10 acres, they might only use five. They buy 20 acres, and if they don't have an active ag operation, meaning they're really growing crops, or they have some kind of livestock operation on the property, they might only use 10, if that. So, what do you do with that extra acreage if you're not using it? So, you know, leasing it out so it gets worked is one of the great ways to make some extra money. So, what we're going to talk about today is if you're leasing farmland, whether you're the landowner that's leasing it out or if you're the operator who's going to work the land, you got to have a written lease so you don't have things go sideways. And where they go sideways is that people agree on the big stuff and they might just do it with a handshake and they skip the details. And when everything's going right, no big deal. But then a dry year hits. You get a drought, or a crop fails, or fence gets damaged. Somebody, big combine turns around and hits and runs it over. Um, Rent becomes unclear when it's due or how it's paid, and then everybody's frustrated. So we want to talk about the 10 essential points every farmland lease should cover, so expectations remain clear, and more importantly, the relationship stays solid. Now, here's the legal disclaimer. I'm not an attorney, shocker. This is practical guidance, not legal advice. This channel exists as a resource for buyers of land and sellers of land here in Idaho, not legal advice. All right? Always confirm specifics with your attorney and your local rules. All right. Good Lord. All right. So here are the 10 rules. Number one, write it down. All right. Handshake deals are still common in agriculture, but when memory and expectations don't match, a written lease is what protects both sides, honestly. A good lease prevents misunderstandings, especially when the market changes, or weather changes, or someone new gets involved. Now, how would someone new get involved? Well, sometimes people get married, so you have a new party involved there. Sometimes, let me think. Sometimes the tenant has a family member that moves to town and they may know more about farming. They want to get involved. Or a family member moves to town who thinks they know more about farming and they want to get involved. So there's certainly scenarios where people get involved where they shouldn't, but if you have a contract, it doesn't matter, right? So there you go. Number one, have a contract, write it down. Number two, use legal names. That means the real legal owner name and the real legal tenant name. If it's an LLC, an S corp, a C corp, a trust, or if you have multiple family members, get the exact legal entities correct. Because if there's ever a dispute, the lease needs to match who actually owns and who's actually responsible. Third point, dates. List the start date and the end date very clearly. If the lease renews automatically, or if it doesn't, spell that out too, because that's really important to know. You want to include required notice and the timing of the notice. How is it being delivered? So basically, you want to say, I mean, the most common one we see is written notice is required 30 days prior to, if you're going to not renew it, if you're the landowner, if you are going to renew it, the landowner, if you're the tenant, you want to renew it or not renew it. 30 days written notice is common. And then you just also want to include, does it have to be mailed? Is an email suffice? Is a text suffice? What counts as that written notice? But your state rules may vary, so confirm it locally. And when you're talking to the attorney about drawing the lease, ask him then. Number four, rent. This really needs to be crystal clear, like a 12-year-old could understand it. All right? Is it going to be cash rent per acre? Is it crop share? Is it a hybrid of the two? Is there any kind of bonus structure? Then define when rent is due and how it's paid. Is it going to be before the planting, after harvest, half now, half later? Whatever you agree on, the mistake isn't the rent amount, it's vague rent terms. You really want to have that dialed in. My name's Rick Powell, in case you didn't know. I'm a third generation broker. My family's been doing this for over 70 years now. My wife Kirsten and I have been licensed associate brokers in multiple states for over 20 years now, and we've been real estate investors for over 30. We love helping people buy and sell dirt. And, if you're looking to buy or sell dirt in Idaho, we'd love to talk to you. Now let's talk responsibilities. Point five is operator duties. What the farmer or the operator is expected to do. This can include planting and harvesting in a timely manner, complying with laws and best practices, not allowing unauthorized uses of the property. That's actually pretty straightforward. Get the crops in the dirt on time, harvest them timely before they spoil. Don't allow anybody else to get on your property. You're pretty good there. Basically, define what good farming and good stewardship means for this lease. All right, now let's go to the other side of that. Number 6, landlord duties. Most leases focus on the operator, but the landowners, you guys actually have responsibilities too. You have to disclose known conditions like the wells, the underground tanks, waste sites, drainage issues, any access limitations. And if the landlord is responsible for certain maintenance, and it's usually drainage improvements or terraces and the irrigation, the water coming in, put it in writing. Number 7, fertilizer payments. Who pays for what and in what percentage? All right. In many situations, the operator handles the annual nitrogen, while the landlord may cover the occasional lime. It depends on what you're growing or what you're doing. If you got livestock, it's not that big a deal. But if you're growing crops, a lime application has to happen every once in a while too. But every operation is going to be different. If you're crop sharing, you may also be cost sharing fertilizer. So agree on the method for funding the fertilizer before the lease is signed. Really, that's as important as the rent. So make sure that's dialed in. Number 8, insurance. Write this down. Always address insurance because farms have risk. People get hurt, equipment gets damaged, property can be damaged, and we certainly live in litigious times. Your lease should spell out who carries what coverage and what liability insurance is required. Both sides should have it. So there's no guessing in case something goes wrong. Number 9, and this is another big one, hold harmless and indemnity clauses. This is the what happened what happens if things really go bad section. All right, if a third party gets injured or damage occurs, your lease should define who's responsible and how those losses are handled. These clauses help reduce risk and keep one incident from turning into a full blown legal fight. And litigation is not cheap. I mean, just I, even the most basic litigation is going to cost you 40 grand out of pocket. And if you don't get your attorney's fees back and you lose, now you've got damages on top of attorney's fees. It's expensive. So a great lease written properly up front will avoid most of those issues. It should read, we're talking about the whole harmless clause now. It should read something along the lines of, provided both parties are in compliance with all lease terms, the landlord and the operator release the other party from any claims or recovery for losses, damages to personal property, or to injuries or death occurring on the farm. Now, remember when I said this is not legal advice? I'm going to reiterate, this is not legal advice. Don't use exactly what I just said. Get an attorney to draw it up because if you go to court for litigation, that clause is really going to be very, very important to what's going on. Another clause that's good to have is an indemnity clause that covers the other party's losses when they're caused directly by the other party's actions, inactions, or a breach of contract. A couple of examples of that. Let me think about this for a second. A couple of examples of that could be that the landlord, say he's out burning weeds out of the irrigation ditch. Fire gets out of control, runs up on the acreage, and burns the crop down. At that point, the landlord would be responsible to pay the operator for the crops. So that would be the example of the landlord doing something that would cause an issue. Now, if you want to take it over to the tenant having an issue, let's say, a couple of quick issues. Say he's got 10 acres of corn, and he's not good driving a combine. He runs a combine in the side of a building and crushes part of the building, or uh, a more realistic scenario might be that it's 4th of July and he's out there shooting off fireworks on the land, and the fireworks land on top of the barn and burn it down. That would be a direct action that the tenant would be responsible for, where his insurance should cover the structure that was burnt down because of his actions. Okay, number 10, the end of the lease. Another critical point. Most of these are pretty critical. Spell out what happens when the lease expires. Can the landlord turn around and re-rent the land immediately? Does the operator have the right to harvest the final crop, even if the harvest happens after the official end date? Always have that in there. Make sure that's in there if you're the tenant, definitely. And what about transfers? What if the operator wants to sublease or if the land sells? Usually, sidebar, usually when somebody sells the land and there's a lease in place or there's crops in place, particularly on ag land, there's usually a clause in the purchase and sale agreement that states that any crops that are in the ground right now, either the seller or the tenant, if it's leased, has the ability to come back and harvest that crop at the end of the cycle. So even if the lease is over, even if you have a new owner of the land, the operator who's got the active lease gets to come back and harvest that crop. So have that spelled out in the lease so you know what's going to happen before the end of the lease arrives. Okay, so those are the 10 must haves. Write it down: legal names, dates, rent, how is it paid, how much is it, operator duties, landlord duties, the fertilizer terms, insurance, the hold harmless and indemnity clauses, and the end of the lease. Thank you for watching. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe to the channel. And if there's another video you'd like to see us make, please drop that down in the comments and we'll be happy to make one for you. We'll see you next time.